You're listening to the King of the Fourth podcast, offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics, with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Happy Halloween! It's King of the Fourth Quarter podcast with Jim Quigley and Mike Quigley. The Celtics, 2 wins, one Friday night and one last night. The Heat and the Wizards run their record to 3-0, which means, Michael, they are on pace for what?
82-0.
82-0. Some definite takeaways to talk about from both games. Mike, the good, the bad, your overreactions. Where do you want to start?
Oh, we should start with the positives.
All right, there's a lot. You go first.
Okay, well, I would start with Miami because I think last night was just ridiculous how bad the Washington Wizards are. I don't know how they can be counted as an NBA franchise. Like, I don't know how you can be as bad as Washington. But I really liked the intensity that the Celtics played with against Miami. And I also like the fact that it was a tough game. Miami showed up. Bam Adebayo was playing out of his mind. Tyler Hero was really somewhat unstoppable with how hot he was in the first half. And the Celtics kind of rode the ship. They went on a nice run to end that game in the fourth quarter. I thought they closed it out well. And I just think that was a nice statement win that I felt good about for early season victories over Miami and New York, two teams that were going to test the Celtics. And I like the overall intensity and the fact that they were kind of locked into that game.
Yeah, no, I thought that was the key. They were absolutely locked into that game. The thing that really stood out for me was just how they played down the stretch of the game, right?
Yeah.
You had a back and forth game for the most part.
It was a great game. Like, it was a playoff atmosphere.
Yeah. Miami was making ridiculous contested threes. Especially in that second half, like they made all playoff series. I was getting PTSD just watching it. But I just thought the way they handled themselves, especially those last 4 minutes where Porzingis fouls out, and Horford has to come in. But the ball, they kept pushing it and they kept running offense, and they were ending up with good shots and every time down. And they just kept that lead around 8 or 9 points, and never let Miami build any momentum. So you didn't have any walking up and getting into ISO balls, grabbing a miss, Miami getting a quick score. Like we saw, it felt like all playoff series last year, right? This was a much more focused end of the game approach where the Celtics decided, even though we're up late, we're going to continue to do our stuff. And you saw that over the last 2 or 3 minutes of the next game too. The difference being is, they focused their offense on Tatum and Porzingis in that game, and obviously there was no Porzingis in the last 4 minutes, so they had to do things a little bit differently. And
Derek White was huge.
Derek White was huge, and I was going to get to that. Yeah. That's the other thing I really like is just how this team is, seems to be okay with letting a guy get going, and no one really getting in the way of it. Whether it was Porzingis against the Knicks, White against the Heat, and obviously Jaylen Brown last night, they seem fine with sharing that load. And when a guy has it going on, and it just shows the depth and offensive versatility of, especially of their top 5. You want to add in Horford in the top 6 there, but it's really, it makes them just so dangerous. There's very little you can. You take away something against the Celtics team, you take away 2 things. You have 2 or 3 other guys that can step up. And Mike, the other thing I really like, we're sticking with the good, is I just love how they're running their offense, particularly out of the post. You saw Tatum there a few times last night. Obviously, they're fine with the Porzingis matchups. Washington didn't have a big, so they went to him a bunch down there last night. You'll
even
see
Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown a little bit. And even if they're not getting the shot, the ball just starts moving and creates so much matchups issues for the other team that it feels like every time they go down there to the post, they're getting good shots. And this is something that's completely different than they really did at all last year, where it was almost like 5 out all the time, and you were much more of a drive and kick offense. Now they're pushing the ball up. They're looking to get that matchup on the post before the team sets up. And then the defense is really in that tough spot of whether they're going to send help or if they're going to play that straight up. And, the Celtics are going to have a mismatch within their starting five that if you play that straight up, you're going to be in trouble. And if you send help, you're even a little bit late on rotations against this team and this offensive skill set, you're in trouble. So it really, it's a wrinkle, but it's an important one. And they're just so skilled. They're just so skilled, this starting five. And I think it's clear we really haven't seen it starting five this skilled since probably the Garnett teams. And it's a lot of fun to watch early. It really is. It's a lot of fun to watch early. So that's my good.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that they didn't come out playing well against Miami.
No,
Jaylen Brown was really struggling once again to start that game with turnovers, and his shot was way off. And they looked like they were in a bit of a funk, and it took a while to get out of it. So I just thought it was impressive how they turned it around and closed out a really tough game. I remember we were texting back and forth that this was just a great game. It was really, both teams were playing good basketball for a majority of that game. And I think the Celtics finally, against Miami, played the right way and just their talent won out. And that's what we want to see with this team is when they play basketball the right way, when they dig in defensively, and when they move the ball to the right person offensively who's got the hot hand and they're trusting each other, they're really hard to beat. So that was a good sign early on in the season.
Yeah, no, they really, they started off so, like you said, and they connected like that, and it was good. And I also liked, you mentioned Brown's slow start, but I like the fact that they tried to get him going early, and it got him more involved in the offense. We talked about that after the Knicks game. Are they going to be able to do that? And there was clearly part of the game plan to get him going early, and then you saw the same thing last night against Washington. I didn't like the slow start. I felt like that was kind of a extension of last season in big games. But the thing that, if I'm looking at one thing that's bothering me early on about this team, it's and you didn't see it last night, and maybe last night doesn't count as much, right? But the thing that, has me somewhat concerned is how well teams are shooting from beyond the arc early on in the season. The Knicks shot very, very well and got good looks. I thought the Heat got good looks early on. I thought those looks were taken away in the second half, but, they continue to make shots. It's a very small sample size. It's nothing to panic over, but, I would like to see that cleaned up, particularly when you start playing really good guards that are going to be able to put you in a little bit tougher situation against your drop coverage, which we'll see immediately against the Pacers and Tyler Halliburton.
Yes, you will. Yep.
So how well are we gonna do on those closeouts when the guard gets downhill, is able to find his man? They haven't done great with that yet. So you'd like to see that get better because it's going to become a tad more difficult. Starting with Wednesday night against Halliburton, who's come out of the gates playing really, really well.
And Charles Lee, he was on the staff of those Milwaukee teams. And those Milwaukee teams traditionally gave up the most three-pointers in the NBA. And one of the poorest side of three-point defense, especially the year we won 7 games against Milwaukee two seasons ago. That was a big part of the game plan, that they were giving up threes to the Celtics players like Grant Williams and what have you. So it concerns me a little bit that that's part of the structure of the team now, that giving up the 3-point shot is going to be part of who they are.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that strategy a little bit too, Mike, because they've been really good around the rim defensively, like really good early on through these first 3 games. I think against the more talented teams, especially teams with really good guard play, I think that could be it could that's what gets you upset in a playoff series, right? Is teams get going
play that
above
you're
water.
gonna play that. Yeah, you're gonna play that defense against Murray and Trae Young.
Yeah,
that's crazy. You know.
Dame Lillard was that? I was more thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, so what? Anything else you're concerned about?
Yeah, the bench. The bench is horrible.
Yeah,
they're horrible. I mean, I hope they improve. They can only go up from here. But outside of Al Horford, we haven't seen much from anybody. Brissett had some moments, especially in that it was a Miami game. That was good to talk about. When the Celtics went on that 10-0 run to get them back in the game in the first half, that was all Brissett getting offensive rebounds and energy plays when the Celtics were lacking it. So that to give him credit for the bench play, but it's been bad. And last night, I don't know if you watched the fourth quarter, but that was pathetic. They scored 2 points. It took them like 7 minutes to get a second hoop. They're just very limited, and I think it's concerning if somebody gets hurt. They don't have anybody to come in who can actually impact the game and do something good. They're going to have to address that at some point because I think their bench is just horrible. Cornette took a giant step back, where I thought he was somewhat reliable last year in the regular season, and he was horrible the whole preseason, and now he looks even worse. So I don't know if they need to start giving Stevens a chance to play and maybe sitting Hauser. I don't know. It looks bad right now. These guys come in and they can't score.
Well, it's only 3 games, and I think there's a track record where Hauser.
Well, it's an overreaction.
Yeah, it is.
Oh no! No, it was my bad. That's not my overreaction. So never mind.
Oh, it's your bad. So I think there's a track record with Hauser. I would not bench him yet. I think that would be a mistake, and you could potentially lose someone that is a move shooter that could help you in big moments. So I also think if a guy was to go down and one of these role players had to step in, let's say, be a spot starter, it's a little bit different than rioting with the bench crew, in terms of how they'd be used, and it would be fine. I think you need more out of Pritchard. Again, it's only 3 games, but he hasn't been good. I expect that to change. I think, eventually he'll get into his rhythm. We've seen it before. He's a good player. He's better than he's shown. There's a track record there. But I am interested, Mike, in seeing, Lamar Stevens. We've seen him play well against the Celtics. He's a tough guy. He'll make hustle plays out there. He'll energize the team. And Steve Matuak, I think I'm saying his name right. Eventually I'd like to see him get some opportunity for some real game minutes. Another guy that's a move shooter, and is comparable in a lot of ways to Hauser. I know Hauser is, someone they've bred and they want to give him the opportunity, but, it'd be nice to see him get some minutes here. They need more. There's no doubt about it. They're gonna at some point need someone from the bench to give them a spark. They haven't needed that yet, but at some point during the year, and probably soon, they're going to need that. And so these guys are going to need to step up. I don't see any help from the outside coming in until at least after December. So, they have some time to figure it out. And I think it starts, look, if Peyton Pritchard is playing better than he has, we're not saying the bench is terrible. We would say we'd like more, but we're not saying the bench is terrible. If Sam Hauser hits a couple of those threes, we're looking at it a little bit differently. But they haven't so far, and I expect they will, but so far it hasn't been good.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point. If some of these guys have to step in the roles where they're playing with the starters, they'll perform better. And I think Brissett's a good example of that. He was out there with the starters, and I thought he had a real impact against Miami. They're just thin, and I do think it's something they should address at the trade deadline. And I also agree, if this play continues, they got to give other guys a shot. So we'll see. I mean, that's been the bad for me. I thought last night was, they came in. It was a 31-point game, and with like 3 minutes left, and they were up 15. You were wondering, did they got to put the starters back in? It was that bad. So what? Yeah, Jim, what's your overreaction to the start of the season, especially these last two games against Miami and Washington?
Well, my overreaction. First of all, I want to, just say my other overreaction that maybe Kristaps Porzingis is a better fit for this offense than Jaylen Brown. He's obviously played out of his mind the last 6-7 quarters. And so maybe he's trying to shut me up, although I don't think, he's one of the dozens and dozens of people listening to this podcast.
A top 10 Celtics podcast.
Yeah, a top 10 Celtics podcast, according to some ranking that I've never heard of before. But it's true. We are a top 10 Celtics podcast, according, I should know the name of the link, after we saw that. But my overreaction is just potentially how talented this Celtics team is and what they're capable of offensively. I think, and this is an overreaction, but I think this has the chance to be the best Celtics team since that 2008 championship team. And I don't see another starting five in the league. And look, I know Denver's awesome, and they're the returning champions, and they deserve to be the favorite because of that. But I watched Milwaukee, and they're good, but they just don't have as many guys that can beat you on a consistent basis that the Celtics have right now. And not only can they do it on the offensive end of the floor, they can do it on the defensive end. With the two league guards. I'm not breaking any news here when I say this, but I just watched these 3 games and I think, oh boy, this has a chance to be really, really fucking good. And, it would take a team playing out of their mind in a 7-game series, I think, to beat this team with the talent that they have. It's just, you look at what Porzingis is capable of. You saw the night that Derek White had the other night. You see the havoc that Holiday and White are doing defensively. There was a couple times last night with Jordan Poole where they just put him in prison. They just put him in prison, and guys are getting up and they're looking for fouls, but there's no fouls. It's tenacious. I just see this team where the sky is the absolute limit, and talent-wise, even a team like last year, which coming into the season we thought was really, really good, they don't hold a candle to this team when we're just talking about specific talent. So that's my overreaction through 3 games, Mike.
My overreaction is that the Washington Wizards are going to break the Charlotte Bobcats record for the worst team in NBA history. I'm just kidding. But man, are they bad, huh? Holy smokes.
That Jordan Poole play where he did a pirouette and he shot the 3.
Holy smokes.
And then Porzingis, blocked him was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I must have watched that like 7 times.
I mean, Bob Ryan might be right about Steph Curry ruined the NBA because these guys think they're Steph Curry. And they're not. Do you see LaMelo Ball? What his numbers are to start the season?
No,
he's like 11 for 40.
Is he? Oh, he'll get going. He's better than that.
My overreaction is, and okay, this is an overreaction, but I still don't trust the coach. I just don't trust Missoula. I don't understand how you let Christoph Porzingis foul out of that game. I don't know what you're watching when Bam Adebayo's just going after him and like hunting him, and Porzingis is playing his ass off, but Bam just had his number. It didn't. The size didn't matter. Bam could get the shot he wanted to get. He could take him off the dribble. He was getting points in the paint. He was making good passes, setting other guys up that were killing the Celtics on 3-point looks. The pick and roll with Bam. We're like 3 or 4 seasons in, and we still haven't adjusted to that illegal pick and roll. And I get worried. My overreaction is I get worried that this coach is going to cost him in the end. That's my overreaction. And my last comment is when they play Miami again, outside of Al Horford, I'd like to see him try other guys on Bam, whether it be Holiday or even giving Jordan Walsh a shot in the regular season to come in and see, maybe you can get some minutes on him, because the Celtics got to figure out this Bam problem when they play Miami in the playoffs again. They have to figure out how to stop this guy, and not just from scoring, but how he's impacting the game to set everybody else up. Because year after year, Miami kills Boston with these threes. Celtics are late to help. They're late to get through these illegal screens. And it's just killing them. I mean, Bam is just killing the Celtics.
Yeah, I didn't think they were late really in the second half. I thought Miami just made incredible shots. But I do agree, Bam was a huge problem. I don't know if I'd go Jordan Walsh, but maybe Lamar Stevens, Brissett, or Holiday, like you mentioned, can all get some shots at him. Porzingis obviously was not the answer in that game. Horford has struggled against him too. In past playoffs. I know Scalabrine spent a lot of time talking about how Grant and some of the small guys did well. Grant did have his moments, but what really worked was when Rob was in the game and was there for help.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave Bam problems. What it did do was open up some 3-point shots against the Heat. But Rob was really the deterrent. So maybe it's bringing Porzingis, taking him off Bam and putting him on like a Kevin Love could work. The problem is if Kevin Love's out of the game, Porzingis doesn't really have the ability to also close on a shooter and then break down defensively without getting beat on the drive. So you don't want to take Porzingis off the floor for obvious reasons. So maybe it's a little bit of zone. It's things they need to take a look at the film and figure out after one game with him in there. Maybe look at what Washington did and things like that in the past to help him out. But it was obviously Bam had his way for most of that night. He really did. He was great, and he's a problem for the Celtics. I think on the whole, the things with Missoula that I have liked is that they continue to run. The offense is different, even if they're shooting still a ton of threes. How they're creating that offense is different. And he's clearly giving up the defensive responsibility. And I think that's been a good thing. So I think there's reasons to not trust him based off of last year, but I do think there's been steady improvement, especially when you look at things that they really struggled on with last year.
Mm-hmm.
On the floor, it has gotten a bit better. Mike, there's a huge trade. Huge trade. There was a whole lot of attitude that went to the Clippers for Nick Batum, Marcus Morris, and KJ Martin and some picks. Who do you think got the better deal? The team that got a bunch of attitude, or the team that got some players?
Philly got Covington too.
Yeah, they got Covington too. Yeah, and PJ Tucker is going over to the Clippers. Yeah, with attitude.
I think that Philly won this trade. I do, because I think those draft picks are very valuable if we're thinking about the long-term impact here. The Clippers aren't going to be very good in 2029. I mean, they could, but I mean, that's an unprotected draft pick. Um, and not only that, those are very valuable assets. And I don't think Daryl Morey is going to sit back with these contracts that he just collected for James Harden and these draft picks that he collected and not make a move. I think whoever is the next star, and it's probably a week away knowing the NBA,
I know, right?
To be moved, it's going to be to Philadelphia. That's what I think. That he's not going to sit back and not try to help Joel Embiid. I don't think any of the players that Philadelphia got are very good. I think Nicholas Batum has played really well the last 2 years, but Marcus Morris and Covington have certainly taken like 3 giant steps back compared to what they used to be. They weren't very reliable for the Clippers these last couple of years. So you could argue that the talented James Harden, the Clippers won the trade, but I just don't know where he fits in LA. The way he plays, he can't. The Clippers can't have this guy dribbling out the shot clock and waiting for his assists at the end, like his pace of play. He needs. Russell Westbrook's been playing well the first 3 games. He's been getting the ball into Leonard's hands. He's been getting the ball into Paul George's hands. He's not shooting it much. He's playing a point guard who's driving to the paint and kicking it out. And he's also been their best defender. And so now he has Russell Westbrook has no like real fit on that team anymore. I don't know where he fits in. And James Harden's the point guard and he's super talented, but I have a feeling it might come to the detriment of their best players. And, Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, you could argue he's the second best player in the NBA behind the Joker. The problem is he's never healthy. And I don't know if this fits in LA. I mean, I'm interested to see. I'm sure James Harden will have a great attitude for like a month. But he's another guy that on a team that has stars who are unreliable because of health, who knows how long this guy will even play for.
I think from a Clippers perspective, it was just so important to get him out of the building. And
I mean,
Sixers to get Harden out of the building. And so I think that probably motivated the Sixers to get something done and get something done quickly. I also feel like they're at a point now where Tyrese Maxey has certainly surpassed Harden as a talent in this league. He's really year 3. Or is year 4 now? I forget. But he's really taken another leap. He's been awesome so far to start this year. And I actually think they have the potential to just be a better team with the offense centered around him and Embiid. As far as I think you're right. The pieces they got in terms of picks and things like that puts them in the conversation. The problem for the Sixers were when, this Dame Lillard trade happened and then the Holiday move subsequently happened after that, they weren't in any position to be in on either guy. And, you heard them rumored to want to be in, but they weren't in position to make a move. They just didn't. Nobody really wants to buy Harris's contract, and no one. There wasn't a ton of other valuable assets for them to give away. Now they get some picks and they got some contracts, so they could at least be in the conversation. It's a matter of when that conversation is going to happen. I know the running joke is that like you said, next week the next superstar could be available. But there's also a really good chance that they won't be this season. And so how do they structure their roster now? They got a ton of wings. A couple of them are kind of unplayable coming over in that Sixers deal. I think KJ Martin could be a good player for them. But you look at Robert Covington and Marcus Morris, it's not like they help you against the Celtics, right? So, how they kind of make that fit and the moves they make subsequently are going to be interesting. And, they are in position now, if something pops up in the off season where they can be a player and try to build off this. The ironic thing is, though, I think they're a better team, than last year. I think the chemistry could be better. I really, but they still might just be a second round out because you look at the top two teams, they're not on their level. They're not on a Milwaukee Bucks level, and they're not at a Boston Celtics level. So can they get there this season by making a move? I think that's a long shot. Can they get there this season with good luck and injuries? Anything's possible, but if they don't, they better make a big move this offseason, or you're going to have a superstar in Embiid that is probably going to start making some noise about wanting out of there. So it's a trade they had to make. I actually think they're heading in the right direction. They're in position to potentially bring somebody in, but they're still kind of in that second round out. So it's an interesting spot, whereas things are getting better, but the ultimate goal really hasn't, and that could cost them their superstar. So a good move, but not a needle-moving move by any sense, at least not yet. As for the Clippers, you're right. You have Westbrook, George, Harden, and Kawhi. That's a lot of mouths to feed. Harden isn't exactly a guy that's taken well to not having his mouth fed. Whether that, I mean that in a a metaphorical way or just, in reality.
I mean, he's not Zion Williamson, but
yeah. So
move it, I'm starving.
Look, I don't think Harden's the type of guy you want to bring in if you're looking to win a championship. I think he has shown over and over again to underperform and when the lights are on the brightest. And eventually, when he fails, he's going to blame everybody else and look to get out instead of anteing up and seeing how he can become a better player or change how he's going to approach the game or change his role on the team. He could have changed his role on this team and became the third whale and a very effective third whale, but he just doesn't have that in him with the Sixers, right? And maybe they're a better team because of it. So I don't know. There's a lot of talent in LA, but there's a lot of combustible pieces, and I don't really see it there either, Mike. I just don't. So
yeah, I think that my feeling about the Clippers were that they could compete with the Nuggets if they were healthy. And now that they have James Harden, and this was before they had James Harden, I was just watching them on NBA League Pass, and it's just a very good team. They play the right way. Kawhi Leonard is clearly the best player on the floor every time.
Really good defensively, yeah.
Yeah. But now I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like this guy is just he can ruin your culture, and he's got Kyrie Irving kind of in him, which I don't know if you saw last night. Kyrie Irving already took his first game off this season. I just feel like this could ruin what they have, and whatever, That's these franchises are horny for big names, and they had some chemistry in LA, and they got a good coach down in LA too. Ty Lue's a really good coach, and so maybe they think that because you have a good coach, you can get to guys like James Harden or guys, and you can't. It's been proven over and over again that you can't. This guy, he'll probably have a great month when he's there. He'll be smiling, talking to the media. You'll see a bunch of videos on Instagram and Twitter of him like making jokes with his teammates and, oh, he's such a good locker room presence and this and that. But as you said, as soon as things get hard, you'll see him pouting on the bench, going back to the same old bullshit. If I was Kawhi Leonard, I mean, how do you like this trade? I don't. We'll see what happens. Good for the Celtics.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing
because I think the Clippers were a team that could match up with Boston. Boston in the NBA Finals. That's how I think they were that good. So
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. You go back 2.5 seasons in the Nets with Harden, Durant, and Irvin are on the verge of just eviscerating the NBA in that playoff run, and then Harden gets hurt, Kyrie gets hurt, and the Bucks move on, even though Durant almost beat them single-handedly in Game 7.
yeah,
and now look
games
where
ever.
they all are. Harden's on his second team, Kyrie's over in Dallas, and Durant's in Phoenix, and I think when you're watching this in LA right now, it's funny. These guys keep getting these second and third, fourth chances, and somehow these organizations think that they're going to have the recipe for success. And it doesn't work that way. I don't think it just does not work that way. So, all right, Mike, Wednesday night, the Pacers. We'll try to jump on a pod before the end of the week. We're still on pace for what, Mike? Celtics are still on pace.
82-0, but 82-0. Pacers lost their first game this week. They've kind of taken a step back after that hot start, but I think it's going to be a fun game. Pacers get out and run. They take a lot of threes. They have a lot of guys they throw at you. So, yeah, and they always give the Celtics fit. So I expect a really good game on Wednesday.
All right, we'll talk to you.
Yeah, Jim, next pod, we should definitely talk about the upcoming tournament, too, because it's right around the corner.
Sounds good. All right.
All right.
See ya.